Hello, what is going on, guys? Hockey Guy 1 here. Welcome to my ranking of the Middle-earth movies. So, yeah, you've probably already seen my reviews. The Middle-earth series is, Lord of the Rings is one of the best trilogies of all time. The Hobbit, not so much. But, yeah, it's a pretty mixed franchise, I'd say. But either way, let's get into the ranking. So starting off at number 6 is without a doubt The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies. This movie is just terrible. Terrible. The fact that this was the movie that the whole trilogy was leading up to, and ended up being a massive, well, I would say massive disappointment, but I wasn't really hyped for it thanks to the first two, but yeah, like the battle that it was completely leading up to was complete and utter trash. Actually, I could have done much more with that battle. It just drags on for far too long. And the CGI in this movie is just absolutely atrocious. It just looks terrible. Some of the worst, easily the worst CGI in this franchise. And this movie had a $250 million budget and had these kind of shitty visuals. It's just unacceptable. And honestly, then the acting and Bilbo and Gandalf, there's not really anything else positive to say about it. I mean, the most emotional moment was supposed to be Throne's death, and it just didn't really catch me because I didn't really care for his character throughout. And honestly, the biggest mistake from the studio was making this Hobbit trilogy. It should have been just like the book. It should have been just one movie. Like, I get it. It's kind of a long book, and it'd be a really long movie. But still, they could have found many other ways to just make it like less than a trilogy. I mean, at least for Lord of the Rings, it made sense to be a trilogy because the books were actually like that. But for The Hobbit, it's just one book. It doesn't really make any sense to make it a trilogy. And yeah, that's why it's at number 6. So at number 5, I have The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey. I mean, it's far better than The Battle of the Five Armies, but that's not saying much. It's still a very mediocre film. Like there's some good aspects of it, like Bilbo and Gandalf are some of the best characters, but then there's also the weak and maybe like the elves. They're pretty weak characters, and the story is ridiculously weak and just far too long. The pacing's kind of a mess throughout, and the CGI was pretty mediocre considering the high budget it had. And yeah, I mean, it just sucks how disappointing this movie is. Though, like, I was kind of expecting this to be a ridiculously good movie because Peter Jackson's back, and Lord of the Rings trilogy was just perfect, and I thought Bilbo's side of the story would be pretty good, but unfortunately it's not. And just ridiculously mediocre. I mean, I like all the aspects like that shows how Bilbo got the ring from Gollum, and Gandalf talking to Saruman, that kind of stuff. That show that kind of sets up the Lord of the Rings trilogy perfectly. That unfortunately in this movie, like I said, it's not very well paced. The story's a mess, and the elves just don't really have much character to them. This film is just mediocre, so that's why it's at number 5. So at number 4, I have The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug. So this is easily the best in the Hobbit trilogy, but still not saying much, because it's still pretty mediocre. Once again, Bilbo develops well, and ending with Gandalf. But like I keep saying, they're just not very well. Other than that, it's just not very well written characters. Like, all the other characters still don't really have much character. And it just sucks how much potential Smaug as a villain could had, but he was just completely wasted here. Like, he didn't even show up until the 3rd act. So I will give it this. The one scene he was in was pretty awesome. With a pretty awesome action scene. But they still completely wasted his character. That is just kind of sad. And the first 2 acts were kind of dragged a bit. Just completely different from the 3rd act, to the point where the pacing just is kind of a mess. And yeah, this film, there's just not really much to say about this. Much else to say about this film. Like the ending, though, I mean, I wish they could have had a better cliffhanger ending. I mean, like I said, and it's just, what have I done, and it ends. Like I said in my review, I wish they kind of had a better ending. Unfortunately, this film just wasn't very good. But it's, even with how mediocre it is, it still manages to be the best in the Hobbit trilogy. At number 3, I have Lord of the Rings and the Two Towers. Now this is where we get into the fantastic films. This film was just fantastic. I mean, the only slight flaw I had with this, it felt like it was a bit too long. But that's really the only flaw with the film. This film was just fantastic from start to finish. Other than that, I mean, the action is just fantastic, and the battles in this film, like I said, fantastic. Like the action. And Gollum has just had a much bigger role than he had in Fellowship of the Ring, and he's just fantastic here. And Sam was well, pretty good. And he was kind of like how they kind of made him the suspicious one to Gollum. And Frodo was just, he's even better than he was in Fellowship of the Ring here. As well as Gandalf, Aragorn, and all the other characters. And I like how they developed the characters well in this Lord of the Rings series. I mean, Sauron is a pretty awesome villain as well as Saruman, who's pretty awesome. And like I said, I mean, this film is still fantastic, and I think it's just the weakest in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but it's still fantastic. At number 2, I have Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. So this movie is just a masterpiece. There's absolutely no flaws with it. I mean, it has the most iconic moments in the franchise, and the most memorable as well, like where Frodo falls down and catches the ring on his finger and then disappears. Here's as well as when Gandalf puts the ring over a fire and it shows the one ring that rules them all in a different language. Those are 2 of the most iconic moments in the franchise, and easily the 2 most memorable moments in this trilogy. And Frodo is just one of the best characters in film. And Gandalf, as well, is one of the best mentor type characters in the film. Oh man, he's probably the best, honestly. Kind of like Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan is, well, he's definitely up there with Obi-Wan. And also Gandalf has that iconic "You shall not pass" line, and it's just a fantastic line. And I probably the most memorable line in this entire franchise as well. And it's probably the best line in this franchise. And the visual effects are ridiculously good for a low budget film, which is all you need to make good CGI in this franchise. Unlike the Hobbit trilogy, which decided to have high budget and not be lazy with the visuals. And yeah, and here they didn't waste any of the villains. Like Saruman is a really good villain. As Sauron didn't really show up much in this one. And yeah, that's about all I can say about this. Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring is just a masterpiece. And now at number 1, without a doubt, I got Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. So, this should be with that now. Lord of the Rings, Return of the King is one of the best movies of all time. And it's just a masterpiece from start to finish. Like, the action, the acting, every single one of the characters are great. And it's a perfect ending to a trilogy. This is definitely how you end a trilogy, not the way the shitty Hobbit trilogy did with Battle of the Five Armies. Yeah, it's just the perfect way to end a trilogy. And yeah, there's hardly much else to say. I mean, Gollum was revealed to be a twist villain the entire time, and it was perfect. And you also get his motivation. And yeah, I mean, this movie is just a masterpiece. There's not much else to say about it. It's just a masterpiece from start to finish, and one of my favorite movies of all time. That was my ranking of the Middle-earth franchise. Guys, what are you ranking in of the Middle-earth franchise? Tell me in the comments below, and I'd like to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.